is that you need to remind me that it needs to be on my screen when we end, because if it's on your screen, the recording is lost. So at the end, if someone just reminds me, it has to be back on my screen. I have to be the one sharing. All right, Carlene, I am recording and I am turning it over to you. And welcome, Ms. Pratt, fellow student.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead, Carly.
Okay. Good morning, all. I'm just going to try and pull up my PowerPoint.
And you'll need to share your screen.
Okay.
And one other thing while we're going to, I will be taking notes. Carlene and I will have a conversation after this if there's some things that we need to work on, or as you are talking and asking questions and making points. Carlene has so much on her mind, so I'll be the one taking notes, and probably in our conference, I'll ask for some clarity or something. So just know that Carlene has got a lot on her plate, so I'm the secretary.
Okay, I'm just trying to get the PowerPoint up while I'm having a little problem.
You send it to me, I could pull it up if you need it.
Okay.
Dr. Hoover, how are you doing? I have never met you. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Same here, sir. My pleasure. My pleasure.
I don't know if I met you, Dr. Morris. I need to get out more in the world, don't I? But when you're sitting over here at Gardner-Webb in this beautiful campus, it's absolute. I don't know if you all have been here, but it is an absolutely beautiful campus. Not many students here. We have a few for the summer, and you know, all the COVID stuff, but it is an absolutely beautiful, and I get to look out on the quad. Oh, I'm in heaven. So that's why I don't leave Gardner-Webb very much.
I'd love to visit one day.
Please do. Please do. Maybe we can have her final dissertation defense here.
Okay.
You guys see that now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. Let me just hit begin slideshow. Okay, so first, Dr. Stone, thank you for that amazing introduction. I appreciate your kind words. I want to thank my committee members for being here today, especially Dr. Morris and Dr. Hoover. I appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy schedule to help me throughout this entire process and to be here today. So your willingness to help really means a lot to me. So I'm going to begin. So the title of my dissertation is a qualitative study on charter and traditional school principals views on administration work and its effects on principals retention. This topic is very dear to me for a number of reasons. I had a prior principal who was thinking about leaving the field, had been in the field for a number of years, an awesome principal. He actually worked under Dr. Morris. And he was just overwhelmed with the responsibilities of having a young child and trying to manage everything at the same time. And that was in a traditional public school. I've recently accepted a charter school principal job. So this has been a new experience for me, and just dealing with everything that I have to with that has been a bit overwhelming. So I wanted to look into this and examine some things with this. So the agenda today will look as follows. Introduction, purpose of the study, research questions, literature review, methodology and research design, the summary and questions. I prefer you can ask, just stop me as I'm going along. You can just ask questions. That way we won't lose our train of thought. I'll just stop right there and we can try and delve into anything that you may have asked at that time. So the problem is that the role of school principals has become increasingly complicated and extremely difficult for principals to manage the job expectations, as the field of education has shifted to accountability and expanding standards. So there's more pressures put on principals with different things coming from all areas as far as accountability, standards, the society is changing, all those things, and just trying to balance that has been a huge problem. According to the Learning Policy Institute, the national average tenure of principals in their school for 2016 and 17 is, just move that out of the way, was 4 years. And to me, that just seems a bit disturbing that the average tenure is 4 years at a job. I mean, when I think back, growing up, I mean, principals stayed forever in their schools. So that's concerning. Fuller et al. 2015 found that the overall workload was ranked as one of the top 5 factors influencing principals' intentions to stay at the current schools by elementary principals from all district types and secondary principals in urban districts in Texas. Many principals find themselves ill-prepared to serve in this role as a school leader because they may not have been given the appropriate opportunities to develop the necessary skills. So the purpose of the study is basically to gain insight from the perceptions of traditional and public school and charter school principals regarding their roles and responsibilities in these 2 different structures, and to develop possible solutions that's consistent with school leadership issues within these systems. And the goal is to retain principals. So by analyzing these responsibilities in these 2 school structures, hopefully we can begin to establish common best practices that are present in both structures to assist with developing the proper supports for principals. So research question number 1. How do the responsibilities and roles of principals from traditional public schools differ from those in charter schools? What are the differences, question 2, what are the differences between traditional public school and charter school principals when examining principal preparation? And you'll find out later on in the PowerPoint, principal preparation means a number of things. It's not just university, but you'll see later on I go into more detail. And question 3, what factors influence traditional public school and charter school principals' decision to leave or remain in the profession? So the significance of this study is that the need of an effective prepared school leader has grown tremendously. And like I said earlier, like due to the unique challenges school leaders face daily as education continues to progress, it's just overwhelming. As you look at this year alone, you look at COVID-19, where schools now have to learn remote learning. And as a principal, you're trying to figure this thing out. And also with Black Lives Matter, you don't know how to proceed and what's acceptable to say. So no telling what's coming next. I hope nothing else is coming next, but just those 2 challenges alone have been very difficult. And as a school leader, you have to really focus on how you're going to handle these situations effectively. Due to the insufficient literature available that compares in depth the similarities and differences of the principalship within these settings and the exponential growth, of charter schools, it would be beneficial for all stakeholders to compare the intensifying job expectations of these 2 entities. The findings of this study may be of interest to school districts, founders of charter schools, central office hiring staff, board members, charter management organizations, on how they can implement appropriate strategies to retain principals to create a pathway of success and career longevity.
Carlene, may I add there as well that I think it would be, and you don't have to put it in your slide, but I think it would be just as helpful for practitioners in the field to know some of the pitfalls, some of the things that they could be looking for, particularly for new people going into the field, to know that, hey, there's going to be because some people really should not go into it if they don't understand that there's just this huge time commitment. So I think it would be great for practitioners and future practitioners as well. Just a comment.
Okay.
And I would also interject that I think the findings would be important for principal preparation programs to note also.
Okay, I'll make a note of that. Thank you for your feedback. Some of the assumptions are the sample size will be limited due to the number of participants. As you'll see later on, I only included 10, so that's an assumption that'll be limited. Competition between charter schools and traditional public schools may spill over into this study and the principal's perceptions and their willingness to share information. As you know, the long history with charter and public, it started out where it was very competitive, and they felt like that the charter schools were taking money from the traditional public schools, but it's since changed, and there's been a lot of relationship building since then and a willing to share information. I know in my new position, I'm not sure if it's because I came from CMS, but they have been more than willing to let my teachers attend trainings. They've been very supportive. They've been helpful, and it's been a true partnership on that end. School districts and charter management organizations are even interested in retaining principals. That's an assumption. I'm assuming everyone is, but I really don't know. And that there are specific strategies that various stakeholders can utilize when preparing school leaders for the role as school principal. Limitations and delimitations. So I have to identify, excuse me, my personal bias is critical to protect and maintain the fidelity of this study due to my position, like I said, as a current novice principal in a charter school. And I have past experience as an assistant principal in a traditional public school, so I need to be aware of that. And this factor may also prevent principals from being authentic with their responses to the questions asked. And being a new principal, I have preconceived notions about why principal turnover is occurring, so I have to be mindful of that. And the sample that was selected for convenience and geographically delimited to principals in North Carolina, so that may come out as a concern. So the theoretical framework that has been set up. So this study, excuse me, conceptualizes a general framework for both entities, as you see, in regards to funding, government regulation, teacher certification, curriculum flexibility, application process. So this outline basically compares charter and traditional public schools in which both of these principles work. And I put it out there just to utilize the organizational and operational framework of these two entities because they do have different structures. So the data collected will be used to recommend well-defined roles and possibly restructure job duties to make the work just more feasible to do. And now we're going to go into the literature review. So the principal roles and responsibilities. The role of the school principal was not formally recognized in education until the 1920s. The role began with school administrators functioning as building managers responsible for building facilities and student discipline concerns. I know all of you, that's all my committee members, you guys have been principals, superintendents, etc. So you truly understand the various role changes that have taken place in this role. It then went on to the principal being accountable to teachers as far as achievement, what goes on in the classroom. And today's principal, which is a statement made by Wallace Foundation 2011, that today's principals must be leaders who can inform curricular change, lead faculty in data-driven decision-making, keep abreast of innovative and diversified instructional strategies, and stay knowledgeable in the use of accountability measures for both staff and students. Now that was 2011. On the next slide, I'm going to talk about a statement that they made where they revamped it in 2013. And basically, what you'll see from the literature is that the principal job is simply just too complex, too poorly constructed, and too isolating. School leaders lack the ongoing support and development required to maintain and foster a sustained commitment. So this is what I was referring to as far as the Wallace Foundation 2013. They identified 5 key responsibilities of principals. So you'll see in that 2-year time period how it's changed, it shifted some. So you always hear this word as a principal: vision, vision, vision. Shaping a vision of academic success for all students, one based on high standards, a climate hospitable to education in order that safety, a cooperative spirit, and other foundations fruitful interactions will prevail. Cultivating leadership in others, so teachers and other adults assume their part in realizing the school's vision. improving instruction to enable teachers to teach at their best and students to learn at their utmost ability, and managing people, data, processes to foster school improvement. So as you can see, those are 5 general things, but a lot encompasses each one when you think about it. And it's just like, how do you balance and manage all of that you're responsible for? So the next thing that it brings me to is the Interstate School Leader Licensure Consortium standards. So when we talk about roles and responsibilities, we have to relate it to how educators are evaluated, what are the competencies, etc. So I'm just going to say ISLLCS is designed to stimulate dialogue about quality educational leadership among stakeholders in the area of administration and to enhance the growth of leadership in education. So they're trying to enhance growth in school leaders. So it's nationally recognized. It was first developed in 1996 and revised in 2008 and 2015. And the name has changed to Professional Standards for Educational Leaders, PSEL. And it provides a framework for education leaders to guide the development of the principal competencies. So I'm not going to read every last one of them, but those are the standards. Just want you to know that they are recognized nationally.
Right. And if I could add, Carlene, those are the standards that were developed in 2008. Those were the standards that the state of North Carolina adopted. There were 7 at the time. And so these are the new PESEL standards that are now being sent to the states to look at. So I know here at Gardner-Webb, we develop our program in the master's program around the 10 PESEL standards that you just had on your slide. So just an aside.
Okay. So one of the most influential sources principals reference on a consistent basis is the professional standards for their state. So North Carolina has established the 8 standards of executive leadership guidelines that we're all familiar with, and you have those on the screen. The Wallace Foundation reports that effective school leadership and successful school reform depends on having principals properly trained. So when you look at this, serves as a guideline as far as the competencies and knowing what's expected in that role and how you perform and what expectations are set. So in North Carolina, I know my program in UNCC, like they drilled these into us over and over and over again. So in my preparation program at UNCC, I got a lot of knowledge on these standards. So as far as understanding the competencies and the standards, so you can have these standards, but it doesn't mean that people are still prepared. So I want to talk about 3 broad areas as far as preparation. I didn't go into detail too much, but as far as just figuring out, okay, now you have these standards, you have these competencies, and now what's the next steps? How do we reassess that these school leaders are being prepared? So the first one is university-based programs. So the requirements of university-based principal preparation programs are dictated by the state and national prerequisites. The most successful, they're saying, university principal preparation programs are research-based, curricular coherence, provide experience in authentic context, use cohort groupings and mentors, structured to enable collaborative activity between the program and area schools. Excuse me. So the research basically was just making suggestions about, what incorporates a successful university principal preparation program. The research also suggests that several elements are consistently incorporated into successful preparation programs and includes rigorous admission requirements. We talked about the use of cohorts, relevant and applied practical experience in the form of an extended practicum or internship, authentic partnerships between programs, local schools, and districts. So even though they're in the research, there's a lack of qualitative research describing the methods for assessing the alignment between the university course of study program and an effective school leader. The university has certain curriculum and so forth that they follow, but there's a lack of literature as far as the alignment with the two. And the next one is university district partnerships. Now, in my paper, I talked about the Principal Fellows Program, and Dr. Morris, she gave me some interesting feedback on that. I didn't put it in the PowerPoint, but everyone from North Carolina, I'm not from North Carolina, but I'm learning a lot, is familiar with the North Carolina Principal Fellows Program, which basically was created in 1993 by the North Carolina General Assembly, where fellows were required to maintain employment as a principal or assistant principal for 4 years to repay back a scholarship that they received. The goal of the Principal Fellows Program was to prepare the most outstanding candidates for full-time school administration in North Carolina. Now, Dr. Morris and I were talking, and she was telling me how it's recently changed, and the new name is Transforming Principal Preparation Program, TP3. So that, I'm going to go back and review that in my paper, but that's interesting information to know that North Carolina is dedicated and committed to preparing leaders. So that's a lot of good information. I'm going to go back in my paper. I didn't put on my PowerPoint, but just wanted to talk about that. So universities and school districts have a common interest in ensuring that principal preparation programs develop highly qualified educational leaders. What school does not want a highly effective principal? So Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, which is one of the largest school districts in North Carolina, their principals pipeline, they work with the following schools: Winthrop, Queens, UNCC, and Wingate. So they have a relationship with those schools. They say that those schools are designed to meet their needs, but they do welcome other schools, people from other schools, that they just feel like those schools have a custom program to them. And research supports that partnerships between the university and the district are difficult to form and harder to sustain. However, when you are able to develop those relationships, that they flourish with positive experiences for all involved. So according to School Leaders Network, I'm going to go on to the next one with professional development, which is the third broad category that we talked about, professional development. Anyone in any area, you want to improve your skills. So professional development should be a part of any profession, and you need to continue to develop those skills every year. So professional development is also very important. According to School Leaders Network 2014, district administrators often neglect principals' development once principals are on the job, especially after the first 2 years. They feel like you're fine, you know everything, you got it, you need to just keep going. But School Leaders Network suggests the following: they need to invest in leadership development beyond just recruiting and placing principals. Engage principals in peer networks where principals can learn from other principals the art and practice of leading schools. Provide one-to-one coaching support to principals beyond the first 2 years. And ESSA basically updated their definition of professional development to include personalized, ongoing, job-embedded activities that are available. And like I stressed earlier, professional development is just very much needed for anyone who wants to enhance their skill set and advance in their field. It just seems like a no-brainer. But those are 3 broad areas that I just wanted to touch on to give you an idea of what preparation I'm talking about in the paper. Now, as far as charter school principals, it's stated in the literature that a large number of the charter school principals are promoted directly from the classroom without even any administrative experience. And I guess that's a problem within the charter schools that they're probably going to have to work on. But They did also say that 70% of charter school principals may have attended a traditional program, but may not have equipped them for the additional role and requirements that's faced in the charter school. So like for me coming into this charter school, I definitely was not equipped to be the HR department, because you don't have a school district behind you, you're doing everything yourself. So I'm learning a lot just about HR and policies and rules and so forth that I was not prepared for, that I don't think a preparation program would prepare you for, because that's not their role. So one of the biggest threats to charter schools is the leadership capacity of charter schools, because they're not building leaders to step in and continue on. But to understand problems in North Carolina specifically, the North Carolina Public Forum, they wrote about 10 issues that they felt that North Carolina needed to work on. So out of those 10, I chose 2 that primarily affected principal retention, and that is state accountability, North Carolina testing, and principal pay. So as far as North Carolina has been ahead of the ball game as far as they had testing in place even before it was federally mandated. They had EOCs. So they were a little ahead of the game, but state accountability in North Carolina testing, for you guys, you know that it's a huge issue. It's just a huge burden on people. The North Carolina General Assembly mandated that testing results determine promotion to the 3rd grade, principal pay, and letter grades in North Carolina. So that just adds an additional stressor on a principal. And then when you look at the principal pay, Carolina ranked 50th in the nation in principal pay. The average 2017-18 salary for principals moved from just under $64,000 per year to roughly $72,000 per year. That's just an average, of course. But North Carolina is still ranked towards the bottom of principal pay among 12 southeastern states. Research regarding the pay for charter school principal is non-existent due to charter's ability to pay their principal as they see fit. So a lot has to do with the geographically location. So of course, like if you're up north and you're New York, similar to here, you make a lot more money, but the cost of living is higher in those places. So they try and make it comparable to the traditional public schools, but they do have the ability to pay their principals what they want. And just reviewing the literature some more about principals retention and turnover, a study conducted by Caracos, Kopus, Yersey, Ensign, and Selick in 2016 stated that school principals are at risk for experiencing burnout in the workplace due to the expansion of their roles and responsibilities in terms of their expected duties. Another study in 2014 found that both novice and veteran principals indicated that balancing family and new administrative duties were difficult and placed them in a very stressful situation. And then almost 30% of principals in high poverty schools leave their school each year, whereas nationally 82% remain in the same school. And as we know, in the high poverty schools, that's very disturbing because those are the most needy kids. And they need good leaders. They need someone to hang in there and stick in with them and have some stability. And that is a concern because their retention rate is even lower than your regular schools. And just a continuation of the review of the literature, North Carolina has one of the highest turnover rates in the country, with the average principal leaving their school for only 2.7 to 3.5 years. A study conducted by the Learning Policy Institute found that from 2015-2016 school year to the 2016-17 school year, approximately 23% of North Carolina principals left their positions, 8% moved to another school in North Carolina, and 15% were no longer working as a principal in the state. One of North Carolina's largest urban school districts struggles with major principal retention issues, where principals were hired for more than a quarter of their schools this year, which is more than triple the national average, and that was in 2019. In charter schools, there have been a limited number of studies conducted on charter school principal turnover. However, one study pointed out that charter schools' average annual turnover are significantly higher than the average traditional public schools. And the high rate of turnover and the fact that charter schools are often unable to tap into a pool of ready candidates when hiring poses a significant problem for retention and hiring of effective charter principals. So like in the school district that I worked previously, I mean, you have a pool of people and you have to get approved to be in this pool. You go through a online interview, a face-to-face and so forth. And then you're approved to go into the pool where only those people are sent information as far as hiring and where you can apply. They are the only people that will receive it, the people that's been approved. So in charter schools, they don't have a pool of candidates to tap into like that. So we talked about retention, and turnover. So the big thing is that this graph shows how much it costs. So they say that the average cost for principal turnover is basically $75,000. That's the average. But you can look at the lower expenditure and the upper expenditure for some people, and that's really a lot. So as far as to hire and onboard a principal, the average is typically $75,000. North Carolina is down as one of the 10 worst schools as far as principal retention. I was kind of shocked. It was North Carolina, Rhode Island, Alaska, California, Oregon, New Mexico, Delaware, Idaho, and Nevada. So truly, if we figure out with this study some ways to retain principals, it's also going to be beneficial as far as cost-wise, so you don't have to keep spending money on rehiring people and going through this onboarding process. And basically, we talked about the workload. A study was conducted, and workload, of course, was one of the top reasons. Some other obstacles that we talked about that I mentioned briefly was personal costs, you know, the sacrifices you make, the long hours, and it's draining physically and emotionally on your well-being. And local state policies, you know, just being accountable to those. And one of the fourth one is the isolation that you feel. I know I felt that this year. I didn't realize it would be to this extent, not having, you know, that person to really talk to about, or, you know, just to run things by, but it is definitely a feeling of isolation. So going forward, when talking about traditional public schools and charter public schools, similarities and differences, as far as accountability, they both have high accountability. The charter is basically accountable due to its authorizer as well. So they have many people that they have to be accountable to. There's varying differences in law and regulation in the charter school, and there's very little difference in law as far as public school. Charter school has increased freedom, and in traditional public schools, there's limited freedom because basically you're following the policies, the school district rules. Staff in a charter school, basically they said that charter school staff is committed to working in a unique setting where they really believe in the mission of the school and the vision of the school. That's why people go there. And honestly, that's why I came to this school, because I like working with at-risk kids, and that's what attracted me to this school. And in the district hires the staff. Curriculum-wise, the curriculum at each charter school is set to each school. In the district, the curriculum is set by the district. Free of union contracts in the charter schools. In the traditional public schools, they must follow union contracts. That's not, doesn't apply to North Carolina, but other states. And then in charter schools, they're free from tradition. And in traditional public schools, traditions are often entrenched throughout the school. And that's very important as far as being a new principal. I know Dr. Morris and I, we had a conversation when I was going through the program about just a school that a principal came in and wanted to change or something that traditionally took place, and it just caused a huge uproar at that school. So that's just something that you have to be wary of, but whereas in a charter school, you don't have those concerns. And then going on to chapter 3 with the methodology. So the study of the method is going to be a qualitative study. Study design is I'm going to analyze the perceptions of traditional public schools and charter school principals regarding their roles and responsibilities in these two settings. I plan on utilizing 5 traditional public school principals and 5 charter school principals. And the data collection method would be who would be the principals, the what, I plan on doing structured one-on-one interviews. When would be a time that works best for them, where at their preferred location. It's going to be open-ended questions, and I'm anticipating 60 to 90 minutes.
And Carlene, you're going to have a provision just in case we continue with COVID, that we understand that you may have to have something through Zoom. Obviously, that may be something that you have to make a change to. And I think as a committee member, I'm comfortable with that in case that does change. I don't know if Dr. Morris or Dr. Hoover are as well, but realizing that the pandemic is only getting worse, you may not have that option of going to their place. And so I'm okay if it's a Zoom, I guess. Leave it as it is, but I'm okay if it's a Zoom session, realizing that we're not out of this yet.
I'm okay with that also.
Okay, thank you. So with research question 1, how do the responsibilities and roles of principals from traditional public schools differ from those in charter schools? It's intended to explore the various roles and responsibilities in each setting while looking at the organizational and operational structure of the school. So as far as looking at the organizational and operational structure, what role does that play with the job duties that each of these principals are performing on a daily basis? Research question 2, what are the differences between traditional public schools and charter school principals when examining their principal preparation? Like I said, those 3 broad categories, not just talking about university, but it's intended to analyze principal perceptions on the preparedness for the role of a principal in both entities and determine if there's a difference between principal preparation and the skills, knowledge, and abilities needed to be a school leader in both settings. And then research question 3, what factors influence traditional public school and charter school principals' decision to leave or remain in the profession? So this is basically seeking to analyze principals' perceptions of the quality of life while serving as a principal. Some may remain, some may leave, but I want to explore the following as far as stress and burnout, heavy workload, isolation within the school as principal, organizational structure, legislation, and accountability. I plan on, as far as data analysis for all the same questions, I plan on doing a comparative analysis and basically explaining themes in narrative form, and the interviews will be recorded and transcribed. And I have a timeline set, as you can see on there. My goal is hopefully to gather all this information and hopefully prepare the final report by October 1st. And that's basically it. Any questions or feedback?
I have a question, Carlene.
Okay.
So I saw that, you know, your 3 research questions that you're trying to get answers for. I just wondered, when you interview these candidates, will you have a set of questions, or have you already come up with a set of questions that you plan to ask to get at the answers to those 3 research questions?
Okay, yeah, so I did develop some questions. Of course, I have to go through the IRB process and get the questions approved and so forth, but I do have some questions that I'm interested in asking.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Colleen, I don't have any questions because I talked to you on the phone about my concerns, and you made those corrections, so thank you.
Okay, and thank you so much for suggestion, those changes and providing me with feedback as far as tying it all together at the end as well. So I truly appreciate that. You're on mute, Dr. Stone.
I do that often. So are there any other questions for Carlene before we go into a breakout session? All right.
I don't have any.
All right, hearing none, I'm going to, Carlene, I'm going to send you to a breakout room, and Deanna, you'll probably be in the breakout room with Carlene, so.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, thank you for letting me sit in.
I know you got to do this not too long from now.
Yes, sir.
All right, I have invited you to join a room, so if you will join in. Oh, Carlene, can you stop
Okay.
sharing?
I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. Okay, and I'm.
All right, all right, so, all right, and I am going to stop recording since we are